Hey, what's up, guys? This is Training Instructions here. Welcome back to another episode of You Guys' Store today. This will be another different episode. I know I've been making unusual episodes lately, but this one is going to be a episode that I don't think I've ever done yet. Maybe I've done with another friend, but definitely not on my channel. We're going to do a review on another video and look at some really cool history of this one particular train, and that is the Amtrak's Ice Metroliner. So what is that? I have actually a sheet, or not a sheet, I have a little bit of history on my other screen about the Amtrak Ice Metroliner. So what this train was basically is when Amtrak was introducing high-speed trains, when Amtrak became a thing at around like 1990, and then they brought a few train sets over from other countries like Germany. They brought one over from Sweden, which is the Amtrak X2000. But this video will be just the Amtrak Ice Metroliner. It's a German ice train that got delivered from Germany and brought over to the United States and arrived in the port of Baltimore around like May 1996, 1997, I want to say. And it was basically a test train on the corridor between Washington, D.C. to New York and back. And they reached speeds up to 162 miles an hour on most of the testing sites. Today on the Northeast Corridor, Amtrak has upgraded its speed limits to 150 miles an hour south of New York City, around New Jersey, between Trenton, New Jersey to, I want to say, Newark, or at least Elizabeth, New Jersey. So Siemens and AEG, with the cooperation of Amtrak and the Deutsche Bunsen, was it Bunsenbahn? So DB, pretty much, if you look at the European stuff, DB had brought a DB Intercity Express train to the United States for a 6-month technical trial and demonstration. After spending July undergoing testing, the ICE begins a 2-month national tour of public displays in August and will enter Amtrak's Metroline service on the Northeast Corridor from October to December 1993. See, I already got that wrong without reading it, so... A series of technical tests verified the train's ability to operate safely on U.S. tracks. The Amtrak ICE train has been tested at up to 162 miles per hour on the Northeast Corridor, and Amtrak has applied to the Federal Railroad Administration for a waiver to the corridor's current 125 miles per hour speed limit in order to operate the ICE at up to 140 miles per hour in Revenue Metroliner service. Amtrak's ICE train consists of 2 powered units, a first-class coach, 3 second-class coaches, an ICE coach service car, and a restaurant car. The Amtrak ICE configuration, which is approximately one-half the length of a typical 14-coach DB ICE consists, accommodates 285 passengers and includes at least one of each type of ICE coach in service in Germany. The restaurant car, similar to the Markland's number 4373 board restaurant car, features a 24-seat full-service restaurant as well as a bistro that accommodates 26 people. The service car, similar to the Markland number 4373, has a private reservable conference room equipped with a fax and copier. The service car and the first-class coach features a private telephone booth as well. The current Acela fleet also has telephone booths in some of its business class and first class, to my knowledge. I don't know if they got rid of that. I would have to look at modern stuff. I know Amtrak's done a lot of changes recently, like the Acela. You can now have Dunkin' Donuts on board the Acela. Dunkin' Donuts coffee is now served on the Cafe Acela, and a couple other features as well. And they have new nice leather seats that's been added about 5 years ago, which they are super nice. The Amtrak ICE train is 655 feet long and weighs 562 tons. The powered units are each rated for a maximum continuous output of 4.6 megawatts. The train features regenerative braking that allows it to return an average of 8% of electrical energy used to power supply network. Basically, what they're talking about is dynamic brakes. The Amtrak ICE train was modified slightly for operation in the U.S. The couplers between the coaches were lengthened to accommodate tighter radius curves than the ICE experience in Europe, because in Europe the speed limits are higher, so when the trains take those curves, they need to have a shorter, like a longer radius in order to make these tight turns, especially when they have tilting mechanisms. I believe the ICE was the first train ever built in correspondence with the French designed TGV to have a full tilt technology system in it, which is what our current Acela fleets have. See, there we go. The DB logos on the sides of the power units and coaches were replaced with Amtrak logos. The Amtrak logo was also painted on the nose of each powered unit. The red and lavender stripe on the ICE was not replaced the typical red, white, and blue Amtrak stripes. Amtrak will use information gathered from the technical tests as it puts together a request for proposal for 26 high-speed train sets later this year, which is the modern Acela Express fleet. Not the ones that are coming in now, the current Acela consists. Amtrak will seek proposals from suppliers with the capability to manufacture all or a significant portion of the train sets in the U.S. Siemens and AEG. Note that they already have an established transportation manufacturing base in the United States and would expand that base if they were to be successful in the bid with Amtrak, which is the Alstom Bombardier project. While the National Tour and Metroliner service were enthusiastically received by rail fans and proponents of I read that right, of high-speed rail service in the United States, the model railroad enthusiasts have not been left out of fun. Marklin has announced production of a special edition HO train set commemorating the Amtrak ICE as configured for the 1993 North American tour. The number 3700 set, which will be limited to a worldwide production of 5,000 units, will include one power end car with motor, one power end car without a motor, one immediate first class, 3 intermediate second class cars, 1 service car, and 1 board restaurant dining car. The set will feature Marklin's digital high efficiency propulsion system with 5% armature, load dependent motor control, and adjustable maximum speed, acceleration, and braking delay. Electronic reverse unit and direction dependent current pickup through the power end car and the front of the train. Yeah, I read that right. The power end car will have metal frames, the engineer's cab with interior details, US-style pantographs, and digitally controlled triple headlights that change over to dual red marker lights depending on the direction of travel. All coaches will have higher interior details and digitally controlled interior lighting. The entire train set, made up of 8 units, will be 202.6 centimeters, which is 79 3/4 inches in length, and can be used on conventional as well as digital layouts. And so that's some information behind the ICE Metroliner. Link will be in the description down below for the article I just read. This was on modelbandcollectors.com/Amtrak ICE. Again, link will be in the description down below. As a matter of fact, I will move this over real fast so you can take a look at it. And this is the information I just read on it for the ICE Metroliner. You can see some old pictures, right? ICE being transferred to custom-built roll-off carriers, railroad tracks, in Port of Baltimore after coming from Germany. ICE at the Ivy City Maintenance Facility in Washington, D.C. during tests. Here's ICE on its en route service from D.C. New York as Metroliner 112. And then here is the ICE crossing over one of the Susquehanna River at Harvard A. Grace, which I believe that's not it. That's Bush River, actually. And then there's the F69 diesel that pulled the ICE Metroliner on tour. And then that's what the cab looked like for the ICE Metroliner. And of course, there's a model of it as well. So, without further ado, I have a nice little 3-minute video on the ICE Metroliner. And there's a couple of videos we'll watch as well. The links will be in the description down below for every information I have, as well as every video we watch. And credit goes to the original owners as well. Letting you guys know now, I'm not making money off of anything. I'm not stealing anything. This is simply a reaction and learning historical video to watch the history and the making of Amtrak's high-speed train sets, especially the ICE train. As someone has asked me a question recently about if my knowledge of the ICE Metroliner, which I don't have much information because I never knew much that it existed. So, without further ado, let's watch this video. I have seen this video before in the past, and it's one of my favorite videos, so I thought it would be a good idea to share this particular one first. Let's watch it. Wow, look how old the boards are for Amtrak. They're different now. Departing at 12 o'clock, track 12, Metro Line or Ice Metro Line train 112 on time, going to Baltimore, Penn, Wilmington, Philadelphia, Newark, and New York. It's a non-smoking train, which back then you could smoke on trains as well as you can smoke on planes. So, but you can't do that anymore, unfortunately. That banner is still there today. That must be a Mark train coming. Nope, it's oh, look how old Mark is. Yeah, everyone takes a smoke back then. Everybody smokes back then. Wow. Look how... See if we can better equipment. Look how beautiful that is. Look how very... Look at the aerodynamics. Look at this. Look at the sleekness of it. Look how clean it is, right? I mean, of course, it's a brand new train, right? That, you know, I mean, it's not new, but it's new. You know what I mean? Like it. Look at the aerodynamics of it. Look how sleek it is. Look at the curves, right? That allows the airflow to come in. So the cars are flat, right? And at the ends, they kind of curve in to push the wind out in between the cars. That's pretty cool. That's good designing by Deutsche Bahn. Of course, I watched that, so. That was Deutsche Bahn. I love the music, too. Ford Restaurant. So that must be the restaurant car. Wow! Wait, hold on. Is that a skylight? Hold on. Let me go back. That is a skylight. Wow! That's really cool. Then you can really see everything. Like, that truly is it's not only a restaurant car and a bistro, it's a sightseer lounge, too. That's pretty cool. You know, the Superliners for Amtrak, they actually do have that. So the Sightseer Lounge is also a cafe car. On the top, you have the Sightseer Lounges with the big glass open windows. And on the bottom level, if you go to the middle of the Superliner car, on the bottom level are tables, right? And you have big windows, and that's where you have the cafe car. The dining car also serves as a cafe car as well. So Amtrak does have that, but it would be nice to have them on some regional services, or at least the new Acellas. That would be nice. But that is really cool. That's a good design. Amtrak made a good move by making, or, well, not making, but having the DB bring the ICE trains over for a demonstration. Tell me the interior does not look like the Concorde. Tell me that does not look like the cabin of the fuselage of the Concorde on the inside. Tell me it doesn't. Look, seats. Wow, look, that's VRE right there. Look at all the single levels. I think I've seen single levels before, like, years ago. Like, probably when I was, like, still in elementary school. So, that's history right there. That's all before I was born. Train information. By MAN Technologies AG, Munich, Germany, the onboard train information system has been developed by MAN Technologies. The system provides information, entertainment, communication, and services for passengers. It also supports the train crew. For menu, press 0. That's really cool. On the Acellas, actually, the cafe car, the conductor has a little office to where he's got a screen to look at information from the power car, and that's where he gets train orders, all kinds of stuff. That's where he makes announcements, all the other stuff. So, yeah, that's really cool. What's up, Gerald? There's a phone booth. Rail phone booth. Wow, that's the bistro right there. Look at the design of that. That's super cool. That's like being in a little Starbucks there, or like Scooter's Cafe, um, or Scooter's Coffee. Look at that design. I don't mean to keep positive, but it's just little details I love looking at. Alright, they gotta be doing this one. That looks like Martin State Airport. That looks like the military base. Look, the kids got the same reaction to me. Wow, look at all this. Look how comfy they look. They're just sitting there having a conversation. Look, they got headphones too, so you listen to the radio. I love the aerodynamics. I love how sleek it looks. I wish we had the ice trains in America. That would be cool. Or at least TGV or something like that. The new Acellas actually look really nice. I love the design of it. My nickname for them is the Dolphins, because the nose looks like the bottom nose of a dolphin. Yeah, I love the way technology was back then. So we have our technology back then, and now we're making what was back then into now, which we have AGV type train sets in America now that was manufactured here in America, owned by America, made by an American company, etc. I mean, the company manufactured Alstom. I mean, it's American. It's also not American because they're basically worldwide, but it was made in America, is what I'm saying. So, you know, and these Acellas were too, made by Alstom and Bombardier when they did a merger project. But the new Acellas are strictly Alstom, and that's got a lot of rail fans all wound up because with technology with Bombardier, Bombardier is a good manufacturing company. But with Siemens now, like making these chargers, making the venture cars, like Brightline, for example, they're using the venture cars. Amtrak just got their venture cars as well, because I see them all the time here in Kansas City. Yeah, the way technology is going for modern rail is going in a somewhat positive direction, and that's really cool to see with all this technology, with all these increment speeds happening on the tracks, etc. Now we just need to implement more of that, and I'm hoping that's where we're going to go here in the next, I don't know, few decades. Junior locking. Philly Eagles going down, by the way. Kansas City's going to beat them. I'm for the Chiefs. 136. Go by Newark. Yeah, that's New York City in the background. They're about to go into the Hudson. Wow, so that was a really good video. Implementing. Oh, look, there's one of my videos. Was it a very good? That was a very good video on just what ice looked like. And here's another one right here. Amtrak High Speed Rail Tours of 1993. So let's take a look at that. It's going to be 28 minutes long. So probably longer just because I'll pause and explain a few things or you know, give my opinions on it. So let's go ahead and give this a watch. I think it's a full documentary. Acellas.
High-speed train service made its debut in the United States today with the maiden run of Amtrak's Acela Express.
November 16th, 2000. I wasn't even a year old when they made the first maiden run of Amtrak's Acela Express.
The trains will run from Washington to New York to Boston.
The new Acela Express can hit speeds of up to 150 miles per hour. But riders say it's more than just speed, as everything from TVs to beer on tap. The seats are softer, the windows bigger. Everything seems more refined.
With a year of record airline delays, overcrowding, strikes, and customer complaints, the time seems right for Amtrak to strike. To find out if Americans are finally ready to embrace rail travel.
Let me tell you this. Americans are always ready to embrace rail travel, okay? And Amtrak has been fighting with these airlines for so long and all the rail service because, yes, airlines have cancellations, they have delays because airlines got to rely more on weather. Trains, they operate rain, sleet, snow, shine, hail, storms, all kinds of shit. And the railroad will not stop. And I can tell you that from Norfolk Southern. The railroad does not stop unless there's absolute reason for it to stop. Like, there better be mechanical failure or there better be a natural disaster to where there's flooding on the tracks, catenary systems ripped apart, etc. Or a tornado comes and wipes your whole train away, and all this stuff. So it is still now, looking today in 2023, the rail service and the airlines are still fighting. Amtrak actually tried something when I worked for United. They're trying to merge with United. So that way, if you book a ticket on United, you can also book a ticket on Amtrak in partnership with United as well. I don't know if that's still going on today. I can ask a buddy of mine who works for United, which you guys know, Toga Brothers Sean, part of my other channel, which is Toga Brothers with my brother Sean, when we explain aviation stuff as well. So let's go and continue to watch.
Now available at 150 miles per hour.
In the year 2000, Amtrak introduced its first true high-speed rail service. While it didn't quite measure up to similar networks around the world, the Acela Express could still claim the title of the fastest train in North America. But it was only a few years earlier that Amtrak had no experience with high-speed trains. So how did they get here?
This looks like a good documentary right here.
Our story takes place in the Northeast Corridor, the most heavily traveled rail route in the United States. It spans more than 450 miles between Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. While portions of the route dated back to the 1800s, the Northeast Corridor had remained incredibly busy throughout the 20th century.
Oh, that's cool.
The route was electrified between Washington, D.C. and New Haven, Connecticut, allowing faster electric trains to cut down travel times for commuters. Penn Central took a big step toward higher speed rail when they launched their Metroliner service in 1969. These electric train sets ran between Washington, D.C. and New York at over 100 miles per hour in daily service. When Amtrak was formed a couple of years later in 1971, they took over the Metroliner service and improved upon it in the coming years. Meanwhile, some other high-speed train concepts were tested in the Northeast Corridor. Penn Central had begun testing 2 UAC turbo trains in 1969. After Amtrak took over, they kept them in service until 1976. A few years later, Amtrak leased 2 diesel-powered LRC train sets from Canada. These were trialed in America from 1980 to 1982, but Amtrak declined to keep them at the end of the lease. Meanwhile, the more traditional Metroliner service had continued to be very successful with commuters, and by the mid-80s, it was reaching speeds of 125 miles per hour. Of course, this paled in comparison to what was happening in other countries around the world. Japan had been running its Shinkansen bullet train network since the mid-60s, and their trains were now operating up to 170 miles per hour. The French TGV network had launched in the early 80s, reaching speeds over 180 miles per hour.
And I believe to this day, the French TGV has the record for the highest speed on rail. Everyone says maglev is the highest speed for a train. However, maglev is a monorail. Technically, it's not much of a train, it's a monorail, okay? Because it runs on one rail on one concrete beam with magnets that lift up the entire train to move it. So technically, it's more of a monorail. So, but if you want to get really technical with that, you know, that's where a difference of opinion can come in. But in my opinion, it's not a train, it's a monorail. Because it's riding on one rail. You wouldn't call the monorail at Disney World a train, would you? You know, same concept.
These and other systems around the world had been developed from the ground up with completely new infrastructure. By this measure, the United States was decades behind the curve. Amtrak wanted to introduce a true high-speed service by the end of the 90s, but they knew that building a completely new rail network was unrealistic. Amtrak's president said, "They are so incredibly expensive, I don't think any will be developed anytime soon." When you're talking about billions of dollars of investment, that kind of money just doesn't come out of the woodwork. For this reason, their high-speed trains of the future would need to be compatible with the century-old Northeast Corridor. Fortunately, some big upgrades would soon be underway. Over $1 billion was being spent to electrify the northern section of the corridor between New Haven and Boston. When completed, trains would no longer need to switch to slower diesel power in New Haven. Instead, a new high-speed service could run the entire route, cutting more than an hour off the travel time. But Amtrak had no hands-on experience with the kind of high-speed trains used in other countries. If they were going to build a new fleet of their own, they would need to gain a better understanding of the technology.
Hence, the deliveries. Yep, there's the X2000. This is what I was talking about earlier.
In November of 1991, Amtrak announced a partnership with the Swedish State Railways and Swedish firm ASEA Brown Boveri, or ABB. The country would land one of its high-speed trains to the US for several months of trial runs in the Northeast Corridor. The train itself was called the X2000. It had debuted in Sweden a year earlier for the route between Stockholm and Gothenburg. Much like the Northeast Corridor, this route was older and had lots of sharp turns that weren't traditionally suited for high-speed operation.
Which is why they implemented tilting technology in these consists.
But the X2000 was designed for this exact setting. Using onboard computers and hydraulics, the train would automatically tilt to lean into curves. This reduced centrifugal forces for passengers, allowing the train to take corners at higher speeds while keeping the ride comfortable. The concept of tilting trains had been around for years. Most earlier attempts were plagued with mechanical issues, but the X2000 had perfected the technology. Combined with this, it also had flexible wheel sets that would fit to the shape of curves. This reduced wear on the wheels and made the ride even smoother and quieter.
We have excellent railroad Washington to New York, but we wanted to recapture a lot of the air shuttle market. And to do that, we wanted to run Washington to New York in a quicker time. And we were interested in the X2000 because it will allow us to use this right-of-way more efficiently. It's one thing to do 135 miles an hour. It's another thing to do it quietly, comfortably, and let passengers either use their computer or write memos at this kind of speed.
The train sent to America would comprise 6 cars. At the head was a locomotive with 4,300 horsepower, making the train capable of up to 155 miles per hour. Following this would be 2 first-class coaches, a bistro car, and 2 more first-class coaches. The rear coach had a driver's cab to allow the train to be operated in both directions.
Ah, so it was push-pull the X2000. Ah, okay. So basically what that is, it's a cab car, is essentially what it is. There's no power in that, on that section of that leader, right? So all the power comes from that motor in the front, and then the back would be your cab car. So that's what a cab car is basically. It's a remote control cab is what it is, that connects to the powered motor or locomotive, well, it's not an engine. It's a power car. It's a locomotive. It's a motor. It's not an engine because there's no engine in it. It's just motors.
It would keep its original blue, gray, and black paint scheme from Sweden, but Amtrak logos would be applied throughout. On the morning of October 20th, 1992, the X2000 arrived at the Dundalk Marine Terminal in Baltimore, Maryland. Soon it would be assembled and put through its paces on American rails for the first time. From November 1992 to January 1993, Amtrak took the X2000 on numerous test runs throughout the Northeast. Most of these tests took place on the Keystone Corridor in Pennsylvania, between Philadelphia and Lancaster.
I did not know.
During this phase, one of the passenger compartments was turned into an onboard laboratory. This allowed engineers to monitor the train's performance in real time. Politicians, members of the press, and other VIPs were invited on some of these test runs. Amtrak wanted to demonstrate the train's capabilities to help generate media coverage and political support for the project. The sleek European train caught attention everywhere it went, and it certainly provided some unique photo opportunities. With the months of testing being a resounding success, Amtrak was soon ready for the next phase of the X2000's visit.
Look at all those cars too. Here, I want to go back real fast to show you guys something. Watch very closely.
Months of testing being a resounding success, Amtrak was soon ready for the next...
Look at the curve.
With the months of testing being a resounding
So that's the actual motor car with the pantographs, right?
success,
Look at the curve, right? Look how much it's curving, right?
Amtrak was soon ready for the
that.
next phase of the X2000's visit.
And then look how much these cars are curving as well, right? There's your cab car. Look at how it's curving like that. That's amazing right there. So that's the cab car, right? It's uncontrolled, no motor in it. The it's a remote control car coming from the actual power car itself, and that's why it can tilt, because it's not a motor with it. The motor is sending all the information to that power, or it's sending information back and forth from the motor to the rest of the cars of knowing when to tilt. And the current Acela Express fleet can do that today. That's cool.
While equipment testing was certainly important, Amtrak was also very interested in gauging passenger feedback. The X2000 would be put into normal Metroliner service for the next 3 months, starting on February 1st, 1993. Commuters would have the unique opportunity to ride the train on daily round trips between Washington, D.C. and New York City. While the speed limit on the route was 125 miles per hour, Amtrak was allowed to run the train at 135 in regular
See, he's got no pantograph up there. There's no pantograph right here.
service.
But there's a pantograph there. So again, that's your power car, that's your cab car.
But the increased speed was only part of the experience. The train's onboard amenities were a big step up from what commuters were used to. The entire train had deluxe first-class seating. The bistro car offered snacks, drinks, and a variety of meal options, including meals served to passengers at their seats. Business travelers could make use of an onboard telephone and fax machine. There were even private glass-partitioned rooms to hold business meetings. Unsurprisingly, the public feedback on the X2000 was overwhelmingly positive.
Because America was ready for change. America is still ready for change in trains. We're ready, guys. Like, anytime we see a positive impact on change for people who want change, you're going to get positive feedback. Now, I'll give you an example of a place that does not provide positive feedback. Brightline, right? Florida, it's 50-50 with Brightline. Don't give me, as someone who's personally rode Brightline, I love Brightline. I love everything about it. I love where it stops. I love the service. I love the pricing of it. You know, I love the interior. I love the seating. I love the lounge. Like, I love everything about Brightline. Okay, there's a lot of Floridians down in Florida. A lot of just Floridians. I don't know what I said. It's in the name. A lot of Floridians down there. They don't like Brightline. Why? Because they don't want change, right? The main issues that the state of Florida has with Brightline is the amount of accidents that happen. Now, listen very carefully, okay? Listen very carefully. The way to fix that problem is to not be stupid. I just offended at least a good 40% of people on my channel right now. In order to fix that problem, you cannot be stupid. You asking me how to not do that? Don't try to beat the train. Don't go around the gates when they're down. Right? If you get stuck on the track, call somebody. Every railroad crossing by FRA law, by Federal Railroad Administration law, every place has a blue sign. Okay? It's got a blue sign that identifies a phone number to call in emergencies, what milepost you're at, and the crossing. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see if I can pull up a picture. I take multiple pictures of these signs so I know what crossing I'm at. a phone number for emergencies when I'm out rail fanning, etc. So that way I have them on speed dial. And rail fans, it's a good idea to take a picture of those blue signs so that way you have the phone numbers too. God forbid you are there and there is an emergency. Let me see if I can find one. Oh. I think it's on my Nikon. Let's try camera roll too. Let's see if I can pull one up for you guys. Sorry, I'm going through all my photo albums of Northeast Corridor stuff. Where is it? It's here somewhere. I know it is. I believe it was in Point of Rocks is where I took that picture. Let's try camera roll 1. Bear with me for a second. No, that's DIB. That's Gaithersburg. I saw a guy get hit by a train. Okay. Here's one. That blue sign right there, report problem or emergency, gives you a phone number, a crossing number, the railroad you're on, and what milepost. Okay? Take a picture of every place you go rail fan and take a picture of a blue sign if you got a crossing nearby for that. That's actually a smart way to do things. Anyways. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So, there's many ways not to be stupid. Don't try to beat the train. Stay away from the tracks. Don't trespass. Don't go around the gates if the gates are down. Okay? The gates are there for a reason. They're letting you know a train is coming. Stand clear. Because a train cannot stop on a dime. We all know that. For those of you who did not know that, a train cannot stop on a dime. As a matter of fact, Brightline can now go almost 110 miles an hour. Actually, it can go 110 miles an hour, and they're going to qualify this month for 125 miles an hour. It's going to take that train at least 2.5, 3 miles to come to a complete stop after slamming the emergency brakes. Okay? That is how. But because they don't want, because people don't like being told what to do, they don't like following laws, they don't, they don't care about their safety, and they think they have the right to own everything. Basically, Karens. Okay? And that's why you have all these accidents. It's that simple as that. Anyways, continuing on.
The Philadelphia Inquirer said, "What impressed us most was the smooth ride. At speeds topping 100 miles per hour, glasses remained upright with their contents barely jiggling. If this is rail travel of the future, we're making our reservations now."
Smart.
The only real complaint about the train was its European-style seating arrangement. The Baltimore Sun said, "Most of the seats are configured to face each other in pairs. Swedes are comfortable with staring at strangers, but Americans are taught that staring at a stranger could cost you your life."
I don't mean to laugh at that, but that's pretty funny. Okay? Coming from one of the murder capitals in the United States. That's pretty funny. But Americans are taught that staring at a stranger could cost you your life. Allow me to introduce you to not be an asshole on transportation. That is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's ironic it's coming from Baltimore. You know why? you know exactly why. That's not supposed to be a racial comment. That's not supposed to be racial profiling. I'm not a racist. I have nothing against any race. By all means, I love everybody equally. You know, that I'm the kind of person who is open-minded, open-hearted to everything and everybody out there. But this is super ironic. And anybody who has common sense can see the irony in that, especially somebody who I can't even see the rest of it. It's just that funny. Continuing.
However, these complaints were few and far between, and the X2000 successfully wrapped up more than 3 months of revenue service on May 7, 1993. But its time in America was far from over. With its resounding success in the Northeast, Amtrak now planned to take the train on a promotional tour across the United States.
Yes, promote.
What's more,
transportation.
they announced that a second high-speed train would soon be tested in the Northeast Corridor.
German train I by Amtrak basically went, Deutsche or DB, give me your ice train set. Basically.
Amtrak had considered test driving a second high-speed train for several months. Their plan was to take the best features from both designs and combine them into the specifications for their future American fleet. In May of 1993, Amtrak announced it was partnering with German rail operator Deutsche Bahn and German...
I did say it right, Deutsche Bahn. So wait, what did I read on this page then? Yeah, Deutsche Bundesbahn. Yeah, no, Deutsche Bahn. That's what I said. Hold on, read that again.
Firm. Amtrak announced it was partnering with German rail operator Deutsche Bahn and German firms Siemens and AEG.
Yeah. That was close.
Together they would ship an Intercity Express, or ICE, to the United States for a trial period of several months. The ICE had launched in Germany a couple of years earlier in 1991, linking Hamburg, Munich, and Frankfurt. As the country's first...
In case you guys didn't know, ICE actually stands for something, Intercity Express. Then that's to be able to get from one place to another, from city to city, pretty much. That's what the Northeast Corridor is. It's an intercity rail network, because you're jumping from place to place to place. Washington, Baltimore, Wilmington, Philadelphia, Trenton, Metro Park, Newark, New York, and, you know, other places like New Rochelle, Stamford, Bridgeport, New Haven, etc. Intercity Express, ICE. It makes sense. And that's what Amtrak is for the Northeast Corridor, is an intercity express.
True high-speed rail service, it was immensely successful and considered one of the finest networks in Europe. Under the hood, though, the ICE was quite different from the X2000. It was far more powerful, clocking in at nearly 13,000 horsepower. This made it capable of over 170 miles per hour. Since the ICE didn't use tilting technology, it would need to slow down for curves.
Ah, okay. So the ICE can't curve, so they just run straight track pretty much from city to city to city, rather than the X2000, you go from here, 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 here. Ah, see, that's something I didn't know. But 13,000 horsepower, that's a lot.
But the idea was that it could accelerate back to its top speed much more quickly.
And the method that they used was what I call the brute force method. The ICE is a high horsepower train set that does not tilt.
High horsepower, high horsepower, HHP 8, 8,000 horsepower, HHP 8.
Those are pretty much straight track at high speed. And that's the other approach. You can take the X2000 approach, use existing road beds, tilt, or build new straight track, not tilt, but high speed.
On June 29, 1993, the ICE arrived in the port of Baltimore. The train sent to America comprised 8 cars. One locomotive was situated at each end. There was a first-class coach, a restaurant.
It's not a locomotive, it's a power car. It's not, or... No, he said...
Locomotive was situated at each...
Okay, locomotive. Sorry, I mixed the locomotive engine. There you go.
Gen.
Sorry,
There was a
I'm being retarded.
first-class coach, a restaurant car, and 4 second-class coaches. The train kept its original white and red paint scheme from Germany, with the addition of Amtrak logos throughout.
Basically, they just...
Shortly after its arrival, the ICE was put through test runs in the Northeast Corridor throughout the month of July.
Rahway, New Jersey.
Meanwhile, the X2000 was finishing up its greatest journey yet, its national tour of the United States. While the Northeast Corridor was America's only viable route for high-speed rail at the time, there were numerous other routes that were proposed to be built across the country. To help drum up support for these projects, Amtrak would bring the X2000 and ICE to dozens of cities and give people a first-hand look at what their future might hold. The general public would only get to see the trains on static display, but local politicians and members of the press would be invited to ride along on short day trips. But since the national rail network wasn't electrified, the trains couldn't run under their own power. While touring some areas of the Northeast, the X2000 would be towed by 2 of Amtrak's old turboliner cars.
No kidding.
But it would be towed across most of the country by 2 F40PH locomotives. The day after it finished revenue service, the X2000 kicked off its national tour on May 8, 1993, with stops in Providence, Rhode Island, and Boston, Massachusetts. 2 days later, it was taken to Elmira Heights, New York, to visit ABB's American manufacturing plant. From here it continued north to Buffalo, where it made a round-trip demonstration run to Rochester and Syracuse. It then headed farther east to Albany, making round-trip runs down to New York City and up to Ticonderoga. The X2000 made its next public appearance 500 miles south in Richmond, Virginia. This was followed by a tour of North Carolina, with stops in Raleigh, Greensboro, and Charlotte. The next day it traveled another 650 miles down to Orlando, Florida. After going on display on Memorial Day, it traveled west to Tampa. It soon continued down to West Palm Beach and Miami. A few days later it came all the way back up for its last stops in the state, in Jacksonville, and finally Tallahassee on June 10th. After touching base again in the Northeast, the train set off for the next leg of its tour in the Midwest. On its way through Pennsylvania, it made a tour stop in Harrisburg. Then it traveled 700 miles westward to Chicago, Illinois. Over the next couple of days, it visited Joliet, Bloomington, and Springfield, and finally St. Louis, Missouri on June 19th. After another stop in Chicago, it headed eastward to Kalamazoo, Michigan, on its way to Detroit.
Wow.
Then it was back to Chicago one more time before heading out of the Midwest, stopping in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and St. Paul, Minnesota along the way. Next on the itinerary was a nearly 1,800-mile trek out to the Pacific Northwest. The X2000 went on public display in Seattle for Independence Day. From here it made demonstration runs up to Bellingham, Washington, and down to Portland, Oregon. It then traveled farther south and made visits to Salem and Eugene. With that, it continued south out of Oregon for 500 miles into California. The train went on display in Sacramento, and then made demonstration runs out to Merced and Fresno, and Oakland and San Jose. On its way to Southern California, the train took the route along the Pacific coast, making stops in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and finally Los Angeles on July 15th. After this, the X2000 headed back east. The final leg of the trip would take it to several cities across Ohio, starting with Cincinnati. It traveled north through Columbus and up to Cleveland, and then west out to Toledo. From here the train made its way out of the state for its last official tour stop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on July 22nd. The X2000's US tour was a resounding success, so much so that it caught the attention of Canadian officials. They were studying the feasibility of a high-speed route of their own. And so, through a partnership with Canadian Pacific Railway, they invited the X2000 to take a brief tour of eastern Canada as well.
No kidding.
Once again, the train was hauled up to New York State, this time crossing the border at Niagara Falls on July 27th. its Canadian journey began with a run out to Windsor, Ontario. From here it ran back north to Toronto and Ottawa, and then Montreal, Quebec. The train made its final tour stop in Quebec City on July 31st, and was returned to the US shortly thereafter. In total, the X2000's tour comprised about 20,000 miles. It passed through 31 US states and 2 Canadian provinces over the course of nearly 3 months. While the train had certainly earned a break, Amtrak put it back into Metroliner service just a few days later, where it would carry commuters for another 2 months. After its final service day on September 29th, the X2000 had been running on American rails for nearly a full year. It was soon shipped back home to Sweden in the fall of 1993.
And they left with Amtrak's markings on it. That's badass. Here we go, ice. Intercity Express.
A few months earlier in July, as the X2000 was finishing its national tour, the German ICE was completing its testing phase. It would soon embark on a national tour of its own, although the itinerary would be considerably shorter. The train would be towed across the country by 2 F-69 PHAC locomotives. These experimental units had been built in 1989 and were developed in part by Siemens, the same manufacturer as the ICE. While they had previously worn standard Amtrak colors, the 2 locomotives were repainted in the same white and red paint scheme as the ICE itself. The train kicked off its national tour on August 6, 1993, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. From here it traveled to Harrisburg and Philadelphia. It then ran down the Northeast Corridor for a tour stop in Washington, D.C., before making its way back north to New York City. This stop in New York was especially noteworthy, as it lined up with the X2000's commuter schedule that same day. The 2 trains ended up on adjacent platforms, marking one of the only known times they were ever seen together.
No, let me tell you something. They did that on purpose. They knew what they were doing, and they did that on purpose. Don't be fooled.
From here, the ICE continued north to Albany, New York. It then headed west, stopping in Toledo, Ohio, and Detroit, Michigan. After arriving in Chicago, Illinois on August 16th, the train made a round-trip demonstration run to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It then traveled 2,200 miles directly to California, reaching Los Angeles on August 25th. From here it ran north to San Jose, Sacramento, and San Francisco. Then it traveled back down to Los Angeles, and then continued down for a round-trip demonstration run between Oceanside and San Diego. Over the next couple of days, the train made its way back east, traveling over 2,700 miles through the southern states. Its next official tour stop was Orlando, Florida, where it spent Labor Day weekend. From here it headed back north, stopping in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Richmond, Virginia. The ICE then passed up through the Northeast Corridor to make tour stops in New Haven, Connecticut, Boston, Massachusetts, and Portland, Maine. Curiously, the final days of the tour took place back in the Midwest. The train made its way back to Chicago, where it made a run down to St. Louis, Missouri for its final tour stop on September 21st. In total, the ICE's tour comprised over 13,000 miles. It passed through 31 states over the course of about a month and a half. It was now time for the ICE to be put through its paces on the Northeast Corridor.
Let it fly.
Following the success of its national tour, the ICE was placed into Metroliner service on October 5th, 1993.
Jack, look what's coming.
Wow, that was cool.
You know what I think we just saw, Jack?
No, what?
I think we just saw the future.
While passengers
You sure did, Jack. You sure did. I wish I was there to see him for myself.
had praised the X2000 for its smooth ride, some noted that the ICE was a little more rough, since it couldn't tilt into corners. But with its luxurious interior design, many riders
Yeah,
agreed
that's true.
that the ICE was in a league of its own. First-class passengers had electrical outlets, TV screens, and stereo music at each seat. There were several private suites in addition to the standard seating.
What?
And riders could use an onboard photocopier, fax machine, and telephones. The restaurant
That's
car
cool.
offered full-course meal service and seating for dozens of people. It was hard to find flaws in the train's amenities, but there were some hiccups here and there.
Of course.
During an earlier trip, a writer for the North County Times said, "I settled for orange juice on this trip, since the waiter couldn't seem to get the computerized coffee machine to work. He called for a conductor in frustration, exclaiming that he couldn't work the machine since the instructions were in German."
You know what? You know what? That makes sense. Alright. My Kia that I have is from Korea. It was actually not made in the US. It was one of the first Forte 5s that was actually imported from South Korea. And when I got my car and when I do my maintenance on it, a lot of the stuff is actually in Korean. So I understand that. That's funny. You would think that they would have instructions in English, so I guess the Germans got the last laugh. You borrow our stuff, you can figure it out.
More broadly, though, some people questioned whether
That's a joke, by the way.
the ICE really made sense for America. The train couldn't reach its full potential without completely new rail infrastructure. The same kind of infrastructure that no one in the country was prepared to build. Despite this, it consistently received high praise from its riders. On December 17, 1993, the ICE made its last public run in the Northeast Corridor. It was soon returned to Germany after 5.5 months in the United States.
That's short. Hence the AM sounds.
With both European trains now departed, Amtrak's rail work began. Based on the information they had collected over the last 15 months, they began working up the specs for what they wanted to see in their own high-speed fleet. Their primary requirements were a fleet of up to 26 trains that could reach 150 miles per hour. These would need to meet the strict US standards for crashworthiness. They would also need to have active tilting technology to handle the curves of the Northeast Corridor. And to comply with the Buy America Act, most of the manufacturing would need to take place within the US. Naturally,
right.
The two primary contenders for the contract were ABB from Sweden and Siemens from Germany. Both companies were backed by additional partners that would assist with the stateside manufacturing.
EMD was partnership with Siemens? And General Electric was ABB? Huh?
Other companies showed interest in the contract, but the one that posed the biggest threat was the Canadian firm Bombardier. The company had never built any high-speed trains before, but they had a partnership with GEC Alstom, the manufacturer of the highly successful TGV trains in France. Bombardier owned the North American rights to the technology, and they were confident this could win out the contract. In fact, the company already had an established relationship with Amtrak. Bombardier had built the LRC train sets that had been tested 15 years earlier. And much more recently, they had manufactured two of Amtrak's newest coach fleets, the Horizon and Superliner 2.
Wait, I thought they were built by Bud. Are they not built by Bud? What's the Amfleet's division? Oh, you know what? Maybe the Amfleet Buds, but I didn't know the Superliners and the Horizon were Bombardier. Huh.
To compete with ABB and Siemens, Bombardier and Alstom revealed their concept for a high-speed train of their own. This would be a US variant of their French TGV, called the American Flyer. The three competitors submitted their contract bids in November of 1995. A few months later, on March 15, 1996, Amtrak announced the winner. Bombardier was selected to build a fleet of American Flyer trains, despite being the only contender not to showcase their product in person. A few years went by as the trains were manufactured and tested. In the meantime, Amtrak unveiled their new brand for the upcoming service, naming it the Acela Express. After years of numerous delays, the Acela service made its first VIP run on November 16, 2000. It was officially opened to the public a month later. In the years following, it would help Amtrak's Northeast Corridor become more successful than ever before. Today, more than 2 decades after their introduction, the original Acela trains are reaching the end of their service life.
Yep.
Alstom is building the 2nd generation fleet.
See, if you sit here right now and tell me that nose design does not look like a bottlenose dolphin, something wrong with you, or we cannot be on the same page here. You cannot sit here and tell me that the front does not look like a dolphin. You can't. But I love the way this is designed. I love the way it was manufactured, and Alstom had complete coverage of it as well, you know. And it's nice and smooth. It's quiet from all the videos I've seen. I've never seen a real person, but all the videos that I've seen, I'm ready for it. You know, I'm ready for that future to come. I know there's a bunch of issues with it right now with infrastructure and the mechanical, and I think a budget issue is what I heard last. But you know, I'm ready for it, and the fact that they kept the logo and the branding on it, yes.
Called the Avelia Liberty, which is again based on a French design. These are slated to begin service in 2022.
It is 2023 and they're not in service yet, so hold your horses there, buddy.
While the X2000 and ICE both missed their chance to be adapted for the US market, they still left an important legacy. They served as Amtrak's gateway into high-speed rail. They showed Americans a new kind of modern technology they had never seen before. And if nothing else, they were certainly some of the most unique equipment to ever grace American rails.
Very true. And just like that, that is the introduction to the ICE Metroliner, the X2000 as well, the history, the tours, and everything like that. I thought this was a very educational video. I thought this was a really good documentary as well. This ended up going longer than what I anticipated to be, but I'm very satisfied. Again, all the credits, all the clips, all the history, every article I was looking at will be in links in the description down below. And all the credit goes to the original owners. I'm not making any revenue off of that. I'm not borrowing anything. I'm simply making an educational video as well as a public opinion from what I saw. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned just as much as I did. I learned a lot just from these videos and a couple of these articles over here. So, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. And if you guys have any comments and questions, or if you want to share your opinion as well, maybe some history facts, if you were alive and you actually were a part of these tours, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your story. Go ahead and leave a like if you thought this was very educational. Also, go ahead and subscribe for more content, and I'll promise you more content will be coming up soon, just as this. Till next time, this is Tranx Productions. We'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye.